Hey, welcome to today's TLC. I'm in a really reflectant mood today. I'm currently looking at the mural I have on my wall. It's a beautiful picture of a lookout point on the top of a mountain in the Azores, which are islands off of the coast of Portugal. And in this scene, you're at the top of a mountain looking out over a lush green valley with a beautiful sunset. And off in the distance, you see this lake. And this lake reflects the other mountains and the trees and the hills that are surrounding it. It's a beautiful, still, glass-looking lake that just makes you want to sit and reflect. That lake is there because it has gathered the water from the runoff of the mountains around it. The minerals, the sediment, the debris that is washed down into that lake has now settled. As I look at this lake and how it plays a role in the vast landscape around it, it's both beautiful in isolation and adds to the picture as you zoom out and see the whole scene. I feel like this lake is symbolic of life, influenced and created by the things around it, unsure along the process of creation, but amazing once you zoom out and you see how it adds to everything. It all starts to make sense. But unlike this mural on my wall, that's an unchanging snapshot of a moment in time, if I were to go visit this mountaintop, the scene would look different. Landscapes change over time, and the point of view offers you something new each time you visit it. This can teach us something about our lives. Often in mental and emotional health, we have a perfect picture that we are looking for, that we're trying to create in our lives, a place of zen and alignment and mindfulness, hoping to capture and hold fast to that moment. But life is dynamic, and we are giving ourselves an unobtainable task when we try to create a stagnant or constant way of being. That's why we often go to a place of all or nothing, because we feel like it has to all be in alignment, and then when it's not, we go to a place of nothing. Then we often turn to something that seems more obtainable, like balance. But if we're not careful, pursuit of balance can also turn into pursuit of stagnance, as if balance was someone holding perfectly still, not leaning to the left or to the right. But if you really think about someone who is balancing, they are constantly shifting their weight. This morning, as I was taking some time to do some self-care, I looked out the window and there was a squirrel jumping between the trees. As I watched him as he perched on one of the topmost branches in a tree, picking from the leaves and nibbling on things, I noticed that his balancing had constant movement, constant directional change in how he was holding his weight. As he was balancing, there were many micro movements that were shifting to help him maintain balance. His tail would flick from one end to the other. His head would go up a little bit higher or a little bit lower as he was nibbling on his little snack. Then a gust of wind would come, and he'd either turn his direction to counterbalance the wind, or he'd shift to a more stable branch. All the while he was balancing, but he was constantly moving, refining, shifting with his surroundings. And he didn't stay at the top of the tree. He went from one tree to the next tree and moved around and explored. He was living his life alive and engaged, not stagnant, not perfect, not all or nothing. Then, when he was done, he ran off to some other house, some other tree, some other adventure. He had got what he needed from this moment, and he was on to the next. These lessons from the lake and the squirrel can give us hope and direction on our journey ahead. First, please remember that your journey is not stagnant. It is ever-changing, and that is a beautiful thing. You will learn things that feel so important and powerful in the moment, and for a time, they might be useful to you, but later, they might not. It's okay to let go of them. I have many clients whose family lives have been impacted by the divorce of their parents or the strain of their parents' relationship. One of my clients is struggling with her parents. Her and her siblings are all adults now, and their parents have decided they're old enough to know some of the struggles that they're going through. So they came to her and told her about some infidelity that her father has had the last few years and what they're trying to do to save their marriage. My client believes that divorce is a high possibility, and naturally she's got a lot of emotion about what's going on with her parents. In this phase of her life, she's exploring boundaries and healthy relationships. She's trying to navigate how much of her own experience to share with her parents and what parts of their experience are not hers to own. That can seem kind of muddy sometimes. I have another client whose parents got divorced when she was younger. When she went through therapy, she felt like she finally had permission to share her story and really tell her parents how she was affected. She started setting boundaries that turned a little bit into control, but she was practicing and advocating for herself for the first time in her relationship with her parents. It has felt very empowering to her. I have a third client who has become a parent herself and has recognized some of the difficulties that come with a marital relationship and raising her own family, and it has softened her a little to how she has felt about her parents' divorce in the past. With that empathy, she has more space for the humanity of her parents. She still advocates for her needs and makes requests, but she doesn't make it mean all the things that she used to make it mean about her lovability or about her relationship with her parents. She has refocused on what she can control, her own experience. And there will be new phases as she moves forward on her journey. Now, none of these phases are wrong. None of them are bad. None of them are unhealthy, quote unquote. They're part of the growing experience. It's okay that each of these clients are going through different parts and have different phases. The balancing comes from taking what you've learned and practicing using it in the best way that you know how. Like a pendulum, it will swing from one direction to the next. I've seen this pattern with my clients where they realize that they haven't been advocating for themselves, so they swing the pendulum to the other side, gain their voice and stand up for what they believe, set a bunch of boundaries, and find their confidence. But after a while, it starts to fade because they realize that some of that is a little distorted. That the extreme of self-neglect is not useful, but neither is the extreme of rigid self-definition. Instead, zooming out and seeing both sides of that pendulum and recognizing what you can learn from both is a beautiful thing. And there will be some stillness like that lake. You will have moments where the dust will settle and it will feel at peace. But something else in your life is going to come and it's going to shake it up a little. It's going to tap that pendulum again. Sometimes it'll push it all the way to the other side. Sometimes it'll just be a little tap. But the goal is not to stay stagnant. It's to practice awareness of which extreme you're pulling towards and find some balance in the middle. To know whether the tree that you're climbing is still useful to you or whether it's time to move on to a new one. This next example is a little closer to home. A very close friend of mine has given me permission to share this story. Let's call her name Sarah. Sarah's husband struggled with an addiction to pornography. As Sarah and her husband found healing, and her husband not only stopped his addictive behavior, but also expanded his emotional health, they had more space to connect. But there was a time in that journey where they took a break from physical intimacy. At that time, that side of the pendulum was useful to them. After they had rebuilt some of the connection in their relationship, the pendulum started swinging to the other end, and they tried to both be open to new ways of experiencing physical intimacy together. Over the years, that pendulum has swung back and forth, depending on what's going on in their lives and how their relationship is doing. It's never stagnant. I recently even had a conversation with her where she shared with me that she had gotten a little bit more relaxed with her intimacy, and although that was helpful at moments, there was also a desire for the time where she felt very purposeful and clear about how she chose to connect with her husband. The beautiful thing was that Sarah wasn't thinking that only one way was the right way. She was zooming out and seeing the whole scene, recognizing what has been useful in the past, checking to see if she wants to revisit that, taking pieces of it that were helpful, and letting go of ones that no longer served her. Then, once she found what was important to her, she shared it with her husband and invited him to do his own exploring. Together, they are creating an amazing relationship in a way that feels balanced, not stagnant. Where in your life can you maybe zoom out a little and find the balance of the pendulum from one extreme to the other to recalibrate, to be a little bit more fluid? This might seem complicated, but it truly is simple. It's as simple as this. What feels aligned with your light in this moment? You don't have to know all of the ways that are healthy. You don't have to borrow fear of failure in the future. Just take a simple moment and find your simple next step. Is it a relationship with one of your children that you're trying to force it to look a certain way? Is it a relationship with your spouse where you feel stuck in a cycle of wanting something to be different than it is? Where could you maybe soften? Or where could you maybe get clearer? What are the extremes in the situation? How can you find the balance in the middle? Or maybe it's a relationship with yourself. What standard are you holding yourself to that might not be as useful as it used to be? Think of how it fits in your journey and let go of whatever you don't want to take with you. Here's today's TLC takeaway. Find a relationship where you feel stuck and take a moment to zoom out. Honor where you've been and what you've learned, but move your gaze forward and see what else might be possible for you. Relationships change over time. They're meant to, and that's okay. It's a beautiful thing. Follow that flow forward, find your rhythm, and embrace the journey ahead. As you do, your perspective might shift. Your reflection might change a little. But you know what will always stay the same? The truth that you get to choose how to take your next step on your journey forward. If you want to learn more about how to think light, feel light, and live light, then hop on my website, thelightcoach.com, to schedule a free intro session and explore what's possible for you. That's the LIGHT coach.com. And I promise you, it'll be an adventure that you will never forget.